Conversations with Nicole. Conversations with Nicole. Let's talk about it. Tell me all about it. I'm here. I wanna know what's on your mind. Ooh, the world needs to hear from you, and I'm so glad to have a conversation to reach the nation. And it's all about you. We'll help each other to discover innovative ways to positively change the world. Let's talk about. Let's talk about. Yeah. Let's talk about conversations with Nicole.
Greetings. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to Conversations with Nicole. I am Nicole Everett, your host. And Conversations with Nicole is a talk show based in Tallahassee, Florida, focused on connecting the community through conversations. And today is what I call Wellness Wednesday. Wellness Wednesday is an opportunity for you, me, and my guests to have a conversation, an interactive conversation. So we are live on Facebook, on YouTube, and on the Greater Works Network on Roku TV. So I invite you all to like and share and tag a friend and let them know that they need to be right here in the place to be. So for those of you who are new to the platform, we do these talks every Monday and Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time for about an hour. And this is a safe space for us to express ourselves. The focus has been on Black and Brown mental health since November of last year. And we have clinicians on, Black and Brown clinicians on, to talk around whatever our topic is of the day and a little bit more. So please feel free to express yourself in a respectful manner, of course, in the comments on Facebook and YouTube. And we will try to address your comment or your question as we move through the broadcast. So, for those of you who aren't new, y'all see I have on these headsets tonight. I'm trying something new. So y'all let me know what y'all think in terms of the sound, if there's a difference there. That's what we're looking for, is a cleaner, crisper audio in the studio. So let me know what you think. What you think? Is it sounding all right? Eh, no big deal. No big change. Let me know. I want to hear from you all too as well though. So if you will, in the comments, give me your city and state. Give me your city and state. Some of you already know, so I'll just shout out where you tuning in from. Like the chief, greetings right here from Tallahassee. Thank you for being here, Terrell. I appreciate you so much. My mom down in Miami, the 305. Thank you for being here. And my sister Shayla down in Broward County, Florida. Thank you for being here. My cousin Denise in Texas. Appreciate you so much for being here, cuz. Look, tell folks they need to be on here because we have got a great conversation tonight. We are talking about compassion fatigue, the cost of caring, the cost of caring. And so I am looking forward to this conversation with my very special guest, Mr. Kevin Hardwick. So I'm going to go ahead and read a little bit of his bio before I bring him on the platform with me. Kevin Hardwick is the founder and CEO of Lampein Marriage and Family Therapy Institute, which is an Orlando based private practice using exclusively telehealth, which is online encounters. All the services are paid for by using a fee for service model. He doesn't do third party insurances, and his clients are adult individuals and couples therapy, and they must be 21 years of age plus. He's a licensed marriage and family therapist in the state of Florida. Graduated from the University of Wisconsin Stout with a master's in marriage and family therapy. Also attended Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary. Received a master's of divinity and a bachelor's in philosophy from Morehouse College. He has provided therapy and counseling services for individuals, couples, and families for more than 30 years. So we talking about somebody with some experience. Okay, some experience here tonight. So, Kevin has a number of modalities in terms of different tools and tips and specialties and therapy types, relational, solution focused, cognitive behavioral, dialectical behavioral, exper- experiential, structural, psychodrama, and a whole host more. I'm not going to name everything, but I will share that he is passionate about seeing people changed and transform, and he considers it a sacred honor to earn the trust of the people who are hurting and to walk them along their courageous journey into a quality of life worth living. So help me welcome Mr. Kevin Hardwick.
Glad to be here.
Welcome,
Thank
welcome,
you, Nicole.
welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, so mom is saying a little more volume. So let me see if that works. Is that better? Test, test, test. One, two, three. Let me know. Give
Testing
me a
1, 2.
yep. Let me know. Give me a thumbs up. Let me know if that's better. Sounds a little louder on me, so y'all let me know. Let us know. How's the sound? I see you, Dilbert. Welcome, welcome. Thank you for being here. Dilbert has been real kind and giving me stars. So I appreciate that. All right. So hopefully the volume is better. If y'all could just let us know in the comments. We're going to move forward just anticipating that it is. So, Kevin, tell the peoples who is Kevin Hartwig? Not what you do, but who are you?
Who am I? Who am I? Well, I am the oldest of 3 children born to Andy and Velma Hardwick. We hail from Jackson, Mississippi. If I'm accurate, Vicksburg, Mississippi, but we were raised in Jackson. My 2 sisters are Renee and June. They both are Spelmanite women. And I relocated to Florida after a 28-year career in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So a lot of people ask me, well, how did you get to Minneapolis from Jackson? So I was an undergrad at Morehouse. I became a father at 20, accepted my call to ministry that same year. It was very interesting being a dad at an all-male African-American school. I had a couple of teachers and peers who really walked me through that journey. Becoming a dad made me a better man. It really helped me in a lot of ways. I'm 59 years old. I am married to, cross-culturally, to the lovely Carol Jean Park. She is a native of Jamaica. And I'm also the father of 3 adult children, Jonna, Joy, and Janae. And we have 5 grandchildren, ranging in ages from 13 to about 6. So that's a lot about me. I could tell you more, but I think that's enough
Good.
who I am.
Well, tell me about and tell us about the name of your agency, because that name is kind of unique.
Yeah. Names are very interesting. And spiritually, the whole naming process and the significance of the name calls forth an identity. And I was actually in Greek class in seminary. And when you're learning the New Testament language of Koine Greek, you have to learn vocabulary. And this one word stuck out for me, lampo or lampein, the infinitive form of that verb. And that's how God does with me. I'm reading something and he highlights it, and a process begins of years unpacking what he shows me. And he always brings me full circle back to that concept. And so the word lampein, as I researched it in all the places it showed up in the Greek New Testament and in the Greek translation of the whole Bible called the Septuagint, the place that the Holy Spirit kept directing me back to was 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 6. So the word lampein again means to shine, to shine. And that verse simply says, "For God, who commanded the light to shine out of darkness, made his light to shine in our hearts, giving us the light of the knowledge of the glory of Jesus Christ, in the face of Jesus Christ, in the person, the person of Jesus Christ." And so I have spent my whole career unpacking the significance of that verse and the what that verse simply means, and what that word simply means is how God transforms us from the inside out. And so that concept really was powerful for me. That a lot of times what we do changes people on the surface, but it really doesn't get to the inside. And so people are trying to put on and be something that they're not. But when God does the work, and when authentic therapy takes place, it's on the inside coming forward.
Come on now.
So I don't mean to turn your program into church, but hey, it's good.
No,
It's good.
I like that. I did want to highlight that because I thought that was pretty significant. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
All right, so we are talking about compassion fatigue. So I want to let the viewers know that when Kevin and I were talking about we actually initially going to name this therapy burnout, which would have
Right.
been kind of strictly for therapists and counselors, but after having a little bit more of a conversation, we just kind of flushed out that, of course, this can extend beyond just counselors and therapists, but
Absolutely.
folks that are caregivers, that are on the front line, essential workers, police officers, EMTs, firefighters, correctional
That's right.
officers, so on and so forth. Your teachers.
Teachers, most definitely.
Folks that are dealing with folks that are dealing with challenges as it relates to the dealing with people and hearing their stories and whatnot. So
That's right.
Yeah, so let's talk a little more about that.
Okay.
All right, so tell me a little bit about what that is. Compassion fatigue.
Exactly. Well, technically, compassion fatigue involves two components: burnout and what's called secondhand trauma. I heard something there. I'm not sure. Hopefully, everything's still okay. Burnout and secondhand trauma. And I'd like to tell a story about burnout and secondhand trauma, or this notion of compassion fatigue, from a personal experience. One of my trainers said that once you burn out, you can't burn back in. You're like burnt toast. Now, you can scrape the burn off, but when you bite into that toast, you're still going to taste the burn. And typically, when we get to that point, it's almost impossible to come back.
Okay.
So that's one principle I want to just kind of share with you about the burnout aspect. But here's the personal narrative. So in 1997, I started my second master's at the University of Wisconsin-Stout. At that time, I was the director of pastoral care working at a home for abused and neglected children from all over the state of Minnesota, but particularly in Hennepin County, where Minneapolis is located. I was the father of 3 children. They were all small, okay? And to get to school, fortunately, I had a scholarship, but I had to drive 90 miles one way. 90 miles one way. Classes started at 9, went to 3. That was the didactic portion. And then the clinical portion started at 4 and went to 9. And then I would have to drive back home because, I wanted to put my kids to bed and kiss them. And I just wanted to be home as much as I could.
Gotcha.
And so I that was 2 days a week, and that was the pattern. On top of that, I worked a full-time job. And because I was the primary breadwinner. And in addition to that, I had a clinical internship that involved working with women who were coming out of prison and were trying to reunite with their children. So you're getting the picture.
Yes.
Okay. And within 30 days of the start of my master's program, my mother had to have open heart surgery, triple bypass heart surgery.
Wow.
Very, very poor prognosis. She flatlined at least twice during the operation. And this is in my first 30 days of the program. So I'm thinking I'm going to have to drop the program. And but my dad was adamant that my mom wanted to see me go to that program and complete. So when I left her, she was in a coma, a medically induced coma.
Wow.
And I'm trying to focus on classes. I'm trying to do all this driving. I'm trying to attend to my children. And, you know, all of this stuff is going on. I'm trying to work a job, directing other chaplains, volunteers, hearing all these trauma narratives. And so a miracle, you know, I'm praying, my sister's singing, you know, getting us through this ordeal. And my auntie, my mother's twin sister, calls me one day and she said, "Kevin, you're not going to believe this. Your mom is sitting up in the bed talking like nothing has ever happened." You know, God gave us 20 more years. November 1st, 2017, my mom went home to be with the Lord finally. Now, I remember saying to my colleague within that first 30 to 45 days of the program as we're getting to know each other, I said, "I really don't want to be a therapist. I don't know if it's going to make a bit of difference."
And why was that? Why was that your thought?
Compassion fatigue. You know, I didn't have a word for it. Now, many of the people who are on this call probably can relate to this. You went back to school in part because you wanted to learn and get credential. But you needed to do that in order to support your family and move to that next level. And some, no disrespect to the program, it was an excellent program. I learned some great things. But I came to that program with a high level of proficiency. I had been in some of the best clinical programs in Minnesota. But because I did not have that piece of paper, I had come to my ceiling. So I pushed myself to go to graduate school like so many of us do. And I was running on fumes. I was burned out at my job, right? I was on call weekends and nights, right? Going and tell children, giving them death notifications, imprisonment notifications of their parents' babies. And you have no idea how a child responds when they hear news or fearful about bad news about their parents. They become inconsolable. And in that program, we would have to restrain them, right? When they became physically aggressive. That's what they did back in the day. And as the chaplain, I would listen to those babies cry. I would wipe their eyes, help them blow their noses, and get them back grounded. And I was burned out.
Yeah.
Although that was the best job I ever had, I was burned out. And so the work conditions that were set up, and that's what burnout deals with. Its origins are the processes at work that tend to be overwhelming and inadequate for the task at hand. I did not have access to supervision. I did not have a format for debriefing, right? All of these things we need to process pain, okay? And
so
then
Kevin, let me interrupt you real quick. So you said the processes that, repeat your definition? Yeah,
the processes that we need to stay whole while we're dealing with other people's pain shatters us. Over time, it shatters us. And this is why we told the children's story, Humpty Dumpty. Humpty Dumpty is actually a trauma narrative for children. Humpty Dumpty sat on the wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses, all the resources that were available couldn't seem to put Humpty Dumpty back together again.
Oh my goodness. Wait a minute. Now hold up. Stop the press. Did y'all know that Humpty Dumpty was a children's narrative for trauma? I need to see. Put your hand up if you knew that, because I did not know that. Put your hand up, give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down, whichever. Right. I need to know. I had no clue that Humpty was doing all of that. Look, we had some mental health, a diagnosis going on around here with Humpty Dumpty.
Exactly. So we created these narratives to help children begin to process pain in a way that doesn't destroy them psychologically. You see. And as a way you have to talk to children about pain when grandmama's sick and dying, right? Or when grandpa's sick, or parents divorce, right? We have to have a way to communicate that. And these stories are healing narratives, are ways to bring it to a child, to begin to help them on a child's level begin to process these things.
Keisha said, see what color he was.
Right.
We don't know what color he was, Keisha. He could have been a brown egg.
Right, he could have been a brown egg. Farm raised, right? Cage free, right? Any of those. So one of the things that, there are several lessons that I learned from that chapter in my life, okay? And sort of the first principle is trusting the wisdom of physician, heal thyself.
Okay.
That if you are going to be in the role of a caregiver and to mitigate the risk to yourself and mitigate becoming cynical about what you were originally passionate about, then you've got to be prepared to do your work. Okay. What do I mean by doing your work? That means that there's going to come a time where you're going to have to talk to somebody else about some of the stuff you've been through that's being triggered by the work that you're doing, the caring that you're doing. The secondhand impact of the trauma of hearing other people's stories. So those are the two parts of compassion fatigue: burnout, secondhand trauma.
Okay, so hold on one moment, Kevin. I forgot to do this. I've been slipping, y'all. So I got to give my disclaimer, which is that all topics, past, present, and future on Conversations with Nicole are for informational purposes only. They are not to be used as a diagnosis for treatment or an answer to any personal issues related to the topic being discussed before, during, or after the program. So we do want to encourage you to talk to someone, preferably a licensed counselor, therapist, or someone working on licensure currently. So there. All right. Go ahead, Ken. So
awesome. Okay. So physician, heal thyself. That means you do your own work. So in 30 years of doing therapy and being a ordained pastor, working with children and families, that's been my call. I've never been a senior pastor. Didn't feel called to be that. I just earned my call to be working with families. And so what was the work I needed to work on? Well, I had to deal with childhood abuse, childhood trauma, right? Childhood sexual trauma, to be specific. Okay, I had to do work around that. Why? Because many other folks God sent my way had gone through that trauma. Now, if I had not done my work, then what I'm going to do in therapy is block their work. I'm not going to go any further than I can go. Okay, so I needed to do my own work. I had to do my own work around my issues of spiritual abuse and moral injury, right? When I accepted my call to ministry, I did not realize that call meant encountering in what we think of as the safest place decisions and processes that are made that created a real conflict within me ethically and morally. Not that I'm high and mighty and superior, right? Anything like that. But they created a tension within me that was traumatizing.
Okay.
Right?
So when you said spiritual abuse, my mind went straight to church hurt.
Church hurt. Exactly.
Okay.
Church hurt. Church hurt. And it's the abuse of power within the church, such that rather than the leadership serving the people wind up serving the leadership. And it's not balanced. It's not balanced. And it's not healthy, and it becomes extremely dysfunctional when that system gets closed and secretive and unhealthy, and we don't have the means to practice accountability and restoration. Both of those, accountability and restoration, or the tools to bring that about. And then the other area that I had to deal with in therapy was compassion fatigue. I did not want to hear any more about nobody else's problems. I was having headaches. I would dread sessions, dread going to work, right? Having fantasies of going into work and just saying, I quit, just walking out. Well, I couldn't afford to just quit and walk out.
Right.
Right. So I did what other people did. It's sad to say that, but in some cases, I quit and stayed.
So when you say you quit and stayed, is that like you checked out?
Checked out. I did my job. I didn't do any more than that. Became very cynical, and those are signs and symptoms. Had trouble sleeping. My frustration tolerance was low. Irritable with my kids, irritable with my wife. All of these are signs of slow buildup that's associated with burnout. And then, the trauma narratives that I would hear, at a point, it would become so much that I would just become flooded, right? I dissociate. What does that mean? Well, it's like your body's there, but your mind is someplace else. And you feel chronically empty and you feel disconnected. You can drive down the road for miles, do many different activities, and not remember one thing you did.
Wow, that's powerful.
Yeah. But this is all a function of me caring, my passion for caring for others, right? And it was coming at a cost. It was coming at a great cost to me. And I didn't know then how to balance, right? So even as I was going to graduate school, the irony was, even though I was going to graduate school to get this credential, I was actually soldier syndrome. Yeah, exactly. So that was a real challenge for me because I was experiencing compassion fatigue at the very same time I was going to get this credential. So principle number 1, trusting the wisdom of physician, heal thyself. Okay. Number 2, accepting the fact that most of us in the role of caregivers are ourselves wounded healers. We're
Say
not
that
God.
again?
Most of us who are in the role of professional caregivers are wounded healers.
Okay.
We ourselves have wounds, right? And some of us think, as I thought, that helping others would heal me. I did not understand the flip side of that coin, which is that helping others will injure me. I did not calculate that properly. Okay. So one of the words you will hear, or one of the terms you will hear related to compassion fatigue, is this notion of vicarious trauma. Now, that word vicarious is not a common word, but we do use it in church, at least in theology, by talking about the vicarious atonement, right? And vicarious atonement is the principle of Christ, Jesus, Christ, not his last name, by the way, Jesus the Christ, Jesus the Messiah. It's the Greek word for Messiah. Jesus stands in our place to help get us right at one with God the Father. In the process, he takes on the consequences of the hurts, the habits, and hangups of the very people he's trying to help. And where does that get him? Well, it gets him dead. It gets him, we have to accept that that's a part of his work. He knew that was going to happen. And so the work that we are called and are passionate about in terms of helping other people, whether they're relatives or non-relatives, when you enter that space, you are entering spiritual warfare. And so this is Isaiah 53:12. Therefore, I will give him a portion, Jesus, among the great, and he will divide spoils among the strong, because he poured out his life unto death and was numbered with the transgressors, for he bore their sin and made intercession for the transgressors. Right? So when you step into that place of helping other people, even those you love, you are going to get pierced. You are going to not be able to sleep at night. You are going to hold their hand when they are broken because they've been cheated on, because their spouse has walked out or died in a car crash, and you've had to walk on that scene and do your job. You are going to get pierced. And to survive that, right, that vicarious trauma that you're going to experience of standing in that gap for that great and noble purpose for which you do that, you are going to need support. You're going to need support, okay? And of course, Christ is our support. If you have that faith tradition, and that's where spirituality shines brightest in the darkest. You know, you're going to need a rock, something to help you hold on to who you are and the best of you when you are seeing the worst, and hearing the worst.
Wow. So Michael Cork said, wow, helping others can injure you. Yeah, that was a powerful statement, Cork. I was thinking the same thing. That's exactly what Jesus did for us. He paid the ultimate price to help us. Agreed.
Right.
Agreed.
Exactly.
So let me pause real quick. So for those of you who may be just joining us, we are into the conversation with Mr. Kevin Hartwig. It's Wellness Wednesday, and we're talking about compassion fatigue, the cost of caring, And so, wow, that was a powerful statement. You know, I had not thought of you injuring, as a person that's trying to help, you injuring yourself through listening to their stories, or, you know, walking this walk with them, holding their hand through their you know, personal experiences and dilemmas that they're going through. But that makes a lot of sense that you mentioned it. So
absolutely.
Thank you for sharing it.
Well, you're welcome. You're welcome. That was a life lesson for me. I think the other principle that has guided me in recovering from trauma, secondhand trauma, burnout, compassion fatigue, secondhand trauma, vicarious trauma, is the principle that inherent in my strength is my vulnerability. So the very thing that makes me strong has in it its own kryptonite. And so the thing that makes me a good listener, the thing that makes me able to de-escalate situations, over time shows itself and I become more exposed and more vulnerable. And I have to anticipate that. And more importantly, those who supervise me have to anticipate that. Right? When we don't, especially as Black folk, what happens for us is, you got to remember, we don't trust mental health by and large. And there are reasons for that, culturally and otherwise, okay? Historically and otherwise, there are reasons for that. We have not always had the luxury of talking about our painful situations and there not being huge consequences attached to it. So the don't talk rule applies. And so we're keeping all this stuff in. We're not really talking about it. Blood pressure is going up. Diabetes is going up. Right? We're not talking about it. And we just continue to absorb. We absorb, right? And that very thing, that very strength, as Black folk, what I've noticed, especially in helping professions that are related to social work, counseling in particular, over time, because we don't have a permission to understand physician heal thyself, or that we are wounded healers, we hold that stuff in, we take it home, our homes are imploding, even as we're caring for others. Our children are acting out, right? Our marriages are breaking down. And then on top of that, right, we now are having work performance issues. We're coming to work later. We're showing less and less compassion to those we serve. We're becoming more judgmental, right? We're telling our supervisor what we will and will not do. And invariably what happens is we become set up for work performance issues when we have not properly identified that the reason our behavior is changing so radically is because we have been injured, but there is no workman's comp for what the soul experiences from the work of caring. So what happens to us as Black people, our wounds are not considered wounds. They're judged as bad behavior. And so we get written up and we get canceled out of our jobs. And all of this is linked to compassion fatigue. It's not because we don't care. It's not because the teachers just don't care, right? And you're right, Keisha. We don't trust the process, right? And so that's a double bind. To do the work, the client is not mine. It's ours. But we feel like we're defending the client from the rest of not only the big system, but the rest of our team, right? And so more and more, it's me and them against the world, right? And that's totally inappropriate. That's totally unsustainable, right? And Black angry lady syndrome, I hear you, right? Black man angry syndrome too, So we've absorbed all this stuff, and because we don't have systems to debrief, right? Because on most of our jobs, if we are a therapist, the person who is supposed to be our clinical supervisor is also our administrative supervisor. You do not want your administrative supervisor knowing all your business. But the process is you need a clinical supervisor. So I can only tell my administrative supervisor just so much. Right? We can only process so much. How is what I'm hearing mirroring what I went through? And now I'm triggered. Right? And so, I may go talk to my therapist, but I got to go back and work with this person again. Okay? So the systems of support are not there. And because inherent in ours are not always there. I won't say they're not there, but they're inconsistently there.
Gotcha.
So what happens then is is that the very strength that brings us into the field of caregiving exposes more and more our vulnerability over time.
Mm-hmm.
And the systems are not there to treat Black folks' vulnerability as a legitimate mental health concern. Now, Dr. Lisa Nahavitz did some work, and she said trauma folks are most often labeled judgmentally as lazy, crazy, or bad. Now, that's really important. Lazy,
Wait a
crazy,
minute.
or
Trauma, folks?
trauma folks who have endured trauma. Okay, she made an important link there. When you look at how trauma shows up, the three clusters of trauma, right? And trauma is in compassion fatigue, burnout, and secondhand trauma.
Right.
Okay, so trauma is there. She said the three key hallmark behaviors of trauma are avoidance. We avoid things that feel like or remind us of what terrified us or what depowered us,
Mm-hmm.
right? That injured us, right? We avoid those things. We don't talk about them,
Right.
right? And the label we put on that is crazy.
Okay.
Mama, what did you go through? Child ain't talking about that. We don't talk about those kind of things. And the child is already thinking, that's kind of crazy. Right? No, it's probably linked to some trauma there,
Mm-hmm.
right? And mom is doing, or dad are doing what they're trying to do to avoid. That's one of the hallmarks, right? The second cluster of symptoms are intrusion symptoms, flashbacks, right? Night terrors, right? Terrified at night, you know. And these intrusive flashbacks and things also get judged. It's kind of crazy, right? But what about when these symptoms get so severe that the person becomes depressed? What do we call the depression for a trauma survivor? They're just lazy. They don't want to work, right? And then bad, the hypervigilant, the third cluster. Intrusion, avoidance, and now hypervigilance. Hypervigilance is that startle response when somebody, comes up behind you and taps you on the shoulder. You didn't expect them in your job, right? Or hypervigilance shows up as going to 0 to 60 really quick because you're angry. You get angry really, really quick, right? Because you feel out of control. You feel blindsided, right? And because you're those stress hormones are so rampant in your body is on constant alert mode all the time, right? You can't sleep. How you going to be asleep and waiting for the hammer to drop at the same time? Doesn't work. So you got all these hypervigilance symptoms going on. You got intrusion going on, cluster of symptoms. You got avoidance symptoms going on, right? So, you hear a sound, you drop on the ground because, when you go in a restaurant, you won't sit with your back to the door, right? You got trauma. That's why you do that. We got trauma, right? And so we label those behaviors as odd, as weird, as off, as crazy, lazy, or bad, which then impacts us, right? Because the very people we're helping, we're no different. Our clients are one paycheck away from being homeless. So are we, right? Many of us who are in the helping field, right? It's not like we got a big cash reserve sitting up there, right? So we can't afford to be sick, right? So these dynamics prevent us from surviving the fact that our strength, inherent in our strength, is our vulnerability, right? We don't even have the self-permissions. We're just beginning as a culture to embrace the self-permissions to get self-care and to eat right and to exercise and to do these things, right? But these are essential to get through and work through compassion fatigue.
Okay, because Kevin, it's sounding a little doomy and gloomy over here. I mean,
well, yeah, I'm sorry that it sounds that way.
No, I mean that's the real, but I'm just like I need the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow or something.
Okay. I can give you some hope. Right. Exactly. Right. Teacher said I joined the military to get paid for my trauma. But most of us who are out here in the trenches don't get paid for what we are passionate about. So what can we do to protect our passion?
Mm-hmm.
What can we do? And number one, I think from a spirit of humility, recognize that we all,
He said, so
we
we
have
have PTSD
or to
before we
get
get
PT. Right.
PTSD. Mm-hmm.
This is why some people say PTSD doesn't stand for post-traumatic stress disorder. It stands for post-traumatic slave disorder. Right. It's part of our historical trauma.
Mm-hmm.
So you're right. If you're a part of a people who has historical trauma, you have trauma before that's multi-generational. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's some truth
Right.
in that. All right. So positivity. What can we do to better survive these aspects of compassion fatigue, of burnout, and secondhand trauma? Well, one of those is recognizing our blind spots. Okay. When I'm driving down the road and I'm preoccupied and I try to switch lanes and maybe I signal, maybe I don't, but I don't see that car. And next thing I know, they're blaring on their horn. I didn't see them. They were in my blind spot. Well, we all have them. And so embracing our blind spots is going to be a real important survival tool. I think a second survival tool is honor the principle of making your home a sanctuary.
Okay.
And I say this, I say it with the, what's the word I'm looking for? Unapologetically.
Okay.
Because I know now what my blind spots are and I know what my vulnerabilities are.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm trying to go to bed, there are certain programs I cannot watch.
Okay.
Why? Because they too closely parallel what I work, or they excite trauma within me,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I gently avoid, I use that cluster of symptoms to actually develop my care plan. I gently avoid those things.
Gotcha.
If I'm out with some other people or we're having a family gathering and they want to watch certain things and I'm triggered, I don't tell them, turn all that up, turn that, off. I don't go off. I just gently get up and remove myself.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because I know I'm triggered by that.
Gotcha.
Okay. Diet wise, right? Things like caffeine and whether they're pops or coffee are going to stimulate, right? And if I've got vicarious trauma, if I've got burnout, if I've got secondary trauma, I'm going to probably use some things in my diet and in my drink to get me through, to push me through.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm learning is I need to avoid those drinks because they're going to impact my sleep. And my sleep is critical because if I'm not getting adequate sleep, it's going to show up as mental health symptoms.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? So that whole notion of sleep hygiene is really important. Okay.
So Kevin, you'll be proud to know that we have done a 2-part show on sleep. Don't sleep on sleep. So we had Ozzy Daniel, who's not with us tonight, but he's a clinician based in Virginia Beach. And he talks about winding down, not eating so many hours before you go to sleep.
Beautiful.
Bringing the temperature down in your space, making sure
There we
it's
go.
dark, there's no
Dark.
light.
Right.
He broke it down to us in a 2-part
Beautiful.
series. So
Beautiful.
we
All right.
are clear on that sleep piece.
On that sleep piece. Okay.
Us practicing it, that might be a whole other story, but at least he has told us what to do.
Exactly. So those things are integrated. They connect, right? What else do I have I found helpful? I think I think having a gratitude practice, my grandmother used to say, finding the silver lining in the dark cloud.
Yes.
Um, one of the first things I do when I wake up is I don't focus on the problems.
Mm-hmm.
I focus on the gratitude. I find things that I'm grateful for, right? And I've developed and collected different sheets that help me find gratitude. Okay. Things can be like, what was the funniest thing that happened yesterday? Um, what's a song that really blesses your heart? Um, uh, what's a color that makes you feel happy,
Mm-hmm.
energetic, right? These are things, these gratitude principles, even cooking, absolutely, right? um, are practices that ground. So there's this whole principle in trauma work of grounding, right? Why? Because trauma, secondhand trauma, as well as burnout, ionize our atmosphere. They electrify it. It's like creating a bunch of static electricity. And when you touch something, ouch, right? And so you have to ground, right, to decrease that risk of static discharge. You have to ground. And so I have one client, for example, who goes out into their yard. They take their shoes and socks off, and they literally walk around their yard to ground, right? To feel the earth solid behind them, to reconnect, to ground,
Yes.
right? And then, then there are all the sensory self-care grounding techniques, appealing to your sense of smell, your sense of sight. In my office, when we did the preview, over on my other wall is a picture of these beautiful giraffes that my grandchildren love. Well, little do they know, Grandpa loves giraffes too. And so I'll find myself going over and just looking at these big, beautiful eyes and the spots of the giraffe. And what do? They help me ground.
Okay.
Right? A simple thing in my office, because the way my space was arranged, it was more effective for me to face a wall. Right? Now, okay, so I'm a trauma survivor, right? I keep looking at that wall for too long, I'm going to start to feel trapped. It's going to be a trigger for me, and I'm not going to probably even pay attention to it. Why am I feeling so stressed? And what I noticed was when I turned my furniture to face out the window, I felt much lighter. My endurance went up. Little things that can help us take care of us through the hard times.
Indeed.
Right? Okay. These are some of the things, these are just the beginning of some of the tools we have.
Some of the survival tools. Okay.
Some of the survival tools.
No, I'm glad again you brought us back around because I was getting a little concerned there, Kevin. All right, so I want to hear from you all. Based on the discussion that we've had thus far, I typically try to get you all a little bit more engaged. But how many of you think you have experienced compassion fatigue? How many of you think you have experienced compassion fatigue? In the comments, give me a hands up, a thumbs up, a church finger, something like that. Let us know. Let us know. Now, I met this sister today at a summit, and please forgive me. I know the name I'm not going to get, but she said, we are all electrical beings that must ground, center, and keep ourselves in alignment. Very informative. Very informative.
Awesome.
All right. Keisha, the question is, how many of you have experienced compassion fatigue? How many of you have experienced compassion fatigue? So my mom says she has. My sister, yes. I will raise my hand. Yes.
Yes.
I believe I do. And I probably have not been as cognitive of it before today. I mean, I definitely, based on the things that you have described, I for surely have experienced it and not really know what that was all about. And that's the thing that's really kind of eye-opening to me tonight, is that maybe it was secondhand trauma or compassion fatigue.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Having a name is helpful to things.
Yep.
Yeah. Now that comment there, Keisha, is very interesting. She said, all my life, and I'm pretty sure others as well, have we really given thought to the level of compassion fatigue that our children are experiencing?
Mm.
Let me just give you a case in point. Millennials, Generation Z children have experienced more divorce than any other generation of the history of the planet.
Mm.
Imagine the narratives these children have heard and watched and tried to compensate for their parents.
So hold on one moment. When you said they experience more divorce than any other generation, meaning they have gone through divorce in terms of themselves and their
No,
relationships, or they have witnessed it through parents?
witness through
Okay,
parents. I'm
got
saying the children.
it.
So
Mm-hmm.
Keisha's comment is how
Right,
we
right,
can
right.
go through it lifelong,
Yeah.
right? So, if children are not treated as invisible but treated as people,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we've got a whole generation that's experienced more loss of marriages and committed partnerships,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so these are children now who are listening to the narratives of their parents, drying the eyes of their parents, sometimes taking on roles for the absent parent or the deceased parent or the incarcerated parent, right?
Mm-hmm.
And who are taking on all these responsibilities very, very young because they feel the passion for their family. See, this is classic compassion fatigue definition, right? They're burned out on life by the time they hit 15 because their job is taking care of what's going on at home, right? And so it's possible that we've got, and likely that we have a number of children who are coming to school every day, who are burned out, and who've gone through secondhand trauma. And my question is, how are these children supposed to be expected to learn STEM subjects?
Wow.
Or analyze literature when the portion of their brain that's most operative is not their prefrontal cortex, the thinker.
Mm-hmm.
It's the limbic system of their brain. It's the amygdala, the hippocampus that are instinctual, right? We call that the reptilian brain. That's what's active.
Wow. So pause. Keisha said, I used to feel bad for children raising children, but realized I helped raise my nephew.
That's right.
When you're raising a child as a child, your youth is interrupted.
Yeah, most definitely.
And it sounds like, based on what you were just sharing just then, Kevin, your development is interrupted as well.
Is interrupted as well. Right. So your strength, you possess your strength, but because our strength as Black people, we are so strong. We are such hard workers that because we carry that hurt inside of us, and we carry that burnout, and we carry that compassion fatigue within us, we don't always recognize when it's beginning to compromise us, and we need help, and we need to reach out for support until there are major consequences, either health issues, relationship issues, career issues, right? And so getting this information and recognizing it earlier is my hope, and that's my reason for being on your program tonight.
Wow. No, that's, again, eye-opening, very, very informative and insightful, and gosh, didn't know any of this. So thank you for sharing
You're
it.
welcome. My
So
privilege.
we need to give some more thought to that. And so for the teachers that are on this broadcast, I know you can't be all things to your students, but just recognize that they may be going through compassion fatigue because of what they are experiencing at home.
I want to give one last permission.
Sure.
Permissions are psychological messages that tell us it's okay to do something.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing I want to give is the pain you see is going to want to make you try harder
Mm.
to stay longer, to stay after hours longer, when you come home, to keep working. And here's what I want to give you as a self-care tip. We must give ourselves permission to unplug. Even though you feel responsible, even though you may feel guilty, if you do not allow yourself to take some vacations, mini vacations, right? Like taking a break at work, right? That may seem odd, but some of us are so committed and working so hard, we don't take breaks. Take your break, right? When you're sick, stay at home. When you are having a mental health day, if you have the day accrued, take it. Don't just keep building it. Take it. Take some time away. Go and see something different. Recharge, right? Because I have been in that situation where I was working 7 days a week, all for a noble cause. I was working with men coming out of incarceration, right? And trying to keep a place in the city where they didn't want to serve incarcerated people, okay? And I was constantly on alert because I was worried, Lord God, I'm going to get a call and somebody will kill somebody up in that group home, right? Up in the guest house, right? And, but I had to learn that I had to go on walks. I had to take my breaks. I had to start practicing more self-care. It's a small thing, but it's so important because we oftentimes feel so guilty about taking care of ourselves. I just want to give that permission to anyone that might apply to. It might not apply to everyone, but it might apply to some. They just need to hear that reminder. You are worth the same investment that you give to others. The golden rule says, thou shalt love thy neighbor, what? As you love yourself. So, if you are giving more to your neighbor and you are neglecting yourself, then by definition, that cannot be love. There's another name for that, and that's called codependence. You are addicted to helping others. It's not just helping, you've now become addicted to it. And we have to unlearn that.
Ooh, you kind of stepping on my toes a little bit, Mr. Kevin.
Well, stepping on my toes too. I'm stepping on my toes too. Just remember that, okay? Stepping on my toes
goodness.
Too.
No, that's good stuff. That is good stuff. Wow. All right. So Denise says she learned a lot. We got Ozzy on. Thank you for being here, Ozzy. Ozzy, we gave you a shout out earlier about sleep. Said very insightful sharing of information. And Ozzy is really big on getting out in the morning, taking a walk. He also meditates. So he talks about getting in your 20 breakfast. Ozzy is really regimented. So, but he, he's on schedule with sleeping and eating and all of that. But he appears to not be stressed about much, I think as a result of being disciplined. So that is a great thing. So my mom is calling me and my sister out saying that both of her girls need to hear you. So
mom.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And Jiva is on. She said, I resonate with having compassion fatigue. Yes, I think many of us are that, this program has definitely brought this out for sure. For sure.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Here's another suggestion, guys. A lot of times, because we are so passionate, taking those 30-minute break changes in my productivity. Absolutely, Jiva. One of the things I would encourage is the mindful message that progress, not perfection. That these things we're talking about rebalancing your life and caring for yourself, even as you care for others. You're not going to do it overnight. You didn't get to this point overnight, so you're not going to change it all overnight. So it's progress. baby steps. Sometimes we can take a little bit more than baby steps, but taking those steps and honoring progress, not perfection. Don't let the perfect get in the way of good enough.
Wait, hold on. Wait. Say that again.
Don't allow the perfect to get in the way of good enough. Okay.
All right.
And sometimes good enough is good enough.
Sometimes good enough is good enough.
Yeah. A lot of times good enough is good enough. Yeah. But our trauma, right, wants to prevent the hammer from dropping. So what do? We take it to that trauma level, that level of intensity. And so we don't think good is good enough. That's historical trauma for us as Black people. We've always, and other brown people, have always had to be twice as good and work twice as hard.
Well, at least that's the narrative that we've been.
That's the narrative, right? And so we try to live up into that narrative.
Indeed. Right? Indeed.
Yeah. That's a trauma narrative.
Wow. This has been really, really powerful. And look, I had a whole question around Black folks and be a few minutes after our time. So I'm going to have you come back. But I really did want to ask you if you thought Black folks in particular were feeling compassion fatigue as a result of, all of the things in 2020, and particularly with Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and George Floyd, and with their white maybe co-workers or acquaintances or what have you, checking in with them, make sure that they were okay, okay white person, and they weren't treating the Black people they knew bad and that sort of thing. So, I really am curious as to what the viewers and your thoughts are around that. So I want to be respectful of time. So Kevin, we're gonna have you come back, and we're gonna have to do a part two to this compassion fatigue.
Compassion fatigue. It'll be my honor. Thank you for having me.
Cool. Well, again, I gotta be respectful of y'all's time. So hopefully you found this to be beneficial. If so, give us some comments. I think we did. Some folks have been commenting that it is. Thank you for the jewels. Really appreciate what you are doing. Welcome. Indeed. So Kevin, how can folks connect with you?
I have a website, www. I got to think about what my website is. www.lmfti.com. There it is. I'm thinking about my Minneapolis company. So it's coming across the bottom of your screen. That's my phone number, and that's how you can get a hold of me. Email is best. There's my email.
Email is best. Okay.
Email is best.
Good. And you are taking new clients?
I'm near capacity right now. But if people, everybody wants evenings, so my evenings are all gone. But I do have some morning slots available. I have to leave time for myself on the weekends, so I work 2 weekends out of the month. And so yes, I do have some morning slots, some early afternoon slots. I don't have any evening slots at this time, unfortunately.
All right. And again, you are in Orlando, so you can serve folks in Florida. And you do private pay only.
Correct. I don't accept any insurances. Right. And that's a whole nother area, I think, that creates burnout, is the whole reimbursement model and what's happening there for therapists. Been there, done that. And so it's a self-care step. It's a self-care step for me.
Okay. All right.
Well, thank you so much, Nicole. And for all of you who are here tonight, thank you. It was a pleasure.
You are so welcome. My pleasure. It's been a very engaging conversation. Again, hope folks found it to be beneficial. Keisha just asked me to put your information in the chat, so I just did, so they can connect. Got to read the comments like Nicole. That's right, E. You better. I'm not gonna clown you like you did me on your show last night. Anyway, we keeping it moving. Donna said we found the hope and the light at the end of the tunnel. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful.
Glad
Glad.
to hear that, Donna.
All right, good deal. So I gotta invite y'all to subscribe to Conversations with
You're
Nicole if
welcome.
you have
Appreciate it.
not done so already on YouTube, subscribing and supporting, and we need all the support we can get. And if you got a Roku TV, add Greater Works Network to your channel options. You have to type us in, but once you do, we will be there every time you turn on that Roku TV. So please do, and you can watch there as well. Now you can't comment on there, but you can watch on Roku. And we have an app, Greater Works Network app, that you can download for your iPhone, for your Android, and all of the programs are there. So this will be on there. So let's keep this conversation going. Tag somebody, share this link with someone, tell them they need to watch it, and your folks that may be experiencing compassion fatigue, give them these tips, these survival tools that Kevin talked about, because it might be the difference between life and
Absolutely.
death,
Yes,
actually, to be quite frank with you. So
Mhm.
this is some very important work. So again, Kevin, thank you so
You're
much
welcome.
for what you're doing and for spending time with us tonight. And I also just want to mention too, one last thing. I do have a live tomorrow. I'm doing these candidate meet and greets, meet and greets as we roll up to election day on August 23rd. So definitely encouraging folks to get out and vote. But if you need to know a little bit more, especially around the local candidates here in the Tallahassee area, I have a few of them coming on between tomorrow and the 23rd. So check out Conversations with Nicole on Facebook and Instagram specifically to get the notices on when that will be. So, all right, good people. Y'all have a great rest of the evening, and we will see y'all next time.
God bless.